Hey, Pro-Life Jen, and welcome back to the Kristan Hawkins Show. Today, we're talking about Planned Parenthood, yes, again, because there's still some confusion going around about the extent of the efforts that we currently have to defund Planned Parenthood within the Trump administration. Unfortunately, they have not been fully defunded, but the Trump administration has taken a baby step in the right direction, and I'm going to go into some of those details with you today, plus something brand new that just happened like an hour ago. We're also going to talk about a much bigger opportunity that is right now on the books to defund Planned Parenthood, thanks to the state of South Carolina, which has a case at the Supreme Court. This case could pave the way to allow states to kick Planned Parenthood out of Medicaid programs across the country. And while I'm at it, I have to add to my list from last week about some good news of more Planned Parenthood clinics closing. And finally, I'm going to talk about the miscarriage story that went viral recently after a woman in Georgia was arrested for placing her deceased baby in a garbage dump. There's a lot going on about this case, and a lot of it is misinformation. So I'm going to tell you what we need to know, and we need to have a long overdue conversation about supporting mothers through miscarriages that we don't ever get to have because of our abortion culture. So let's get into it. First, Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood, as you know from my previous podcast, I feel like my show should now be why Planned Parenthood should be defunded. They get money from a bunch of places in the federal government. Their hands are in every cookie jar possible. Remember the Zika virus, that mosquito-borne virus a few years ago that was plaguing Florida? Yeah, they even got money from that. Like anything they can get money for, they get money for. That's part of their genius. Like any money-loving corporation, they've diversified their income streams. And that includes within the federal government, which is over 40% of their income. According to their own fiscal report from 2022 to 2023, they raked in nearly $700 million in taxpayer funds. That's almost $2 million a day in our money from our paychecks to their bank account. Far and away, the biggest source of government money that Planned Parenthood gets is Medicaid money. Remember what Medicaid is? Medicaid is health care for people who can't afford private health care. That hasn't really changed. They continue to receive, Planned Parenthood continues to receive a lot of Medicaid money. They get it from the federal government, and then they also can get it from state governments, from state Medicaid funding. But we'll also talk about Title X funding. That's one of their other little hands in the cookie jar about their taxpayer, revenue. Title X funding it's a federal program that was created in 1970 to, quote, provide access to contraceptive services, supplies, and information to all and one who need them, end quote. Title X, get this, is administered by the archaic Office of Population Affairs. It's called OPA, under the Department of Health and Human Services. OPA has some creepy racist roots that go all the way back to eugenics in America. My good friend, the Reverend Dean Nelson, who founded Douglas Leadership Institute and worked for the Human Coalition, did work for Family Research Council. He actually worked on a report before he passed away on why OPA needed to be abolished. And most people are like, well, why would you care? They're giving taxpayer dollars and grants to poor women. And I'm going to put that in the show notes for you, this report, because I think you should read through it. But basically, OPA is a racist organization and has been since it was founded and inserted into the Department of Health and Human Services in 1970. Should not be there. There should not be an Office of Population Affairs. Why? Because their intended purpose is to make sure certain people don't reproduce. That's literally the point of Title X. So news broke recently that the Trump administration was freezing Title X funding, about $120 million in Title X grants to a number of organizations over their DEI hiring practices. There were several Planned Parenthoods that still receive Title X funding, which amounts to about $27 million, and they've had their grants frozen. Now, some people, and I think people just did this, and I don't want to call out names, even though I'm thinking of their names right now, wanted to elevate the Trump administration. So they did these fake headlines on right-wing news sites, on Twitter, on X, saying Donald Trump defunds Planned Parenthood. That is not factually correct. That is just a lie. And they should be ashamed of themselves because what they've done is they've created mass confusion. A lot of people are like, oh, Donald Trump's done it. No, he hasn't. He froze $27 million out of $700 million. And he didn't do it because like they kill babies. He did it over DEI. Now, if DEI is how we defund Planned Parenthood, let's freaking go. Whatever. I'm good for it. I'm here for it. Down. But I know 27 million sounds like a lot of money to you, but it's not when you consider it. They get nearly 700 million. And it's really not that big of a deal, sadly, because the money that Planned Parenthood continues to get from the federal government is always fungible. There's some people are like, well, Title 10 funding is only for contraceptive services. It doesn't say anything about abortion. So therefore they can't use their taxpayer dollars for abortion. But that doesn't mean much. As Dean and Reverend Dean Nelson's report, I'm going to read to you how they explain how fungibility works at Planned Parenthood. They get some of our taxpayer dollars for this. They use it for that. Quote, although in theory, Planned Parenthood cannot use Title 10 funds for abortion as a method of family planning, it performs abortions in the same facilities that receive Title 10 funds for family planning services. Someone who pays the rent on a massage parlor that is also a brothel cannot reasonably say he does not fund prostitution. Just as doctors who receive kickbacks from certain pharmaceutical companies tend to prescribe more of that company's drugs, Planned Parenthood has been shown to profit from and have an inflationary effect on the abortion rate in America. Yep. That's exactly right. So someone tells you, well, like Title 10 isn't to give to abortion. It's just for contraceptive services for poor women given to Planned Parenthood from a racist agency in HHS. It's not a big deal. It's just a little bit of racism. And ultimately it's good because poor women get contraception. Wrong. One, racism is bad. Two, Planned Parenthood kills babies. Three, the tax dollars they get, even if it's not supposed to be used for abortion, is fungible because maybe you just paid for them to plow their parking lot or replace the asphalt in their parking lot, or you're just paying for the receptionist with Title 10 funds. You're not paying for the actual 15 minutes the abortionist is killing a baby, but you paid for the table, you paid for the electricity, you paid for everything else, yet you're still subsidizing. We are still subsidizing abortion. So while I'm excited that this $27 million has been frozen, it hasn't been permanently, defunded from them. It's just been frozen while their DEI hiring practices can be investigated. We still have a long way to go. The Planned Parenthood is still receiving hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, I'm supportive of stopping any dollars that go to Planned Parenthood. I am not one of those people that says, well, if you don't defund them all the way, defund them a little bit. No, as much as we can do is a good thing with me. However, the freeze doesn't go far enough. And we, as the pro-life movement, we as conservative commentators on X, and you people know who you are, who are spreading rumors, should demand more so we can save lives of these children, these 392,000 babies Planned Parenthood is killing every single year. We have to have our facts straight. So let me give you facts. Medicaid is the big dog, is the big cookie jar that Planned Parenthood gets their taxpayer dollars from. Like I said, there's lots of cookie jars that Planned Parenthood has their little hands in. Their grubby, little, dirty, unwashed, blood-covered hands are in lots of cookie jars. But the big cookie jar, the big one right in the middle is Medicaid. That's where they get the majority of their money from. Now, a portion of these Title 10 funds are being frozen. It's a good thing that we're going to slate to go to Planned Parenthood, but it doesn't have anything to do with abortion itself, which we all know is just wrong. And no funds have actually been permanently defunded from Planned Parenthood. They've just been frozen. So most of the money comes from Medicaid. That hasn't been touched. We're just talking about 27 million out of 700 million from Title 10 to some clinics. And it hasn't been defunded, that 27 million. It's just been frozen. So we still have a long, long way to go to debar and defund Planned Parenthood of our taxpayer dollars. Leading me to the next point. Just a couple of hours ago, and by the time you guys see this, if you watch my podcast on Friday, it'll be the day before because it's Thursday. The House passed the Senate's budget timeline for the budget. This is important because this means the time has started now for reconciliation. So now the Senate and the House are united that they're going to pass a budget. And Donald Trump I think he's calling it the big, beautiful bill. I literally think that might be the official name because that's all I hear on Fox News. The big, beautiful bill, which is supposed to have the largest tax cuts in American history. Bring it. I'm all here for it. Now it starts. And as I've talked about before, reconciliation is the legislative way to defund Planned Parenthood because you can't get anything done in the U.S. Senate unless you have 60 votes to invoke cloture, i.e. end debate. Because in the Senate, to get something passed, you have to have 60 votes to end debate on the bill. Then you have to have 50 votes to pass the bill or 51 votes to pass the bill, right? You actually need 2 votes on a bill to get it passed. We would not be able to get 60 votes because, one, not all Republicans are pro-life, as we're finding in state legislatures, which don't get me started about what just happened this week. We had Republican leadership in Arkansas, West Virginia, and North Carolina, all 3 killed pro-life bills. Yeah, from people who said they're pro-life. Yeah, because politicians want to do one thing. They want to get reelected, and they rely on pollsters who are pro-choice and the Republican establishment in Washington, D.C., who tell them to stay away from the abortion issue, which is wrong. And we've proven it's wrong election after election after election, but they still keep listening to stupid people. And then they make stupid decisions, which means Students for Life Action is going to have to get very active in state legislative primaries next year to go after leaders who should know better and should have acted to save lives. But anyway, we don't have 60 votes, even with the number of Republicans. We don't even have that many Republicans. And even if we had all 60 Republicans, they all wouldn't be courageous. So the only way to defund Planned Parenthood legislatively through Congress is through a process called budget reconciliation, because it's a procedural budget maneuver that doesn't need that cloture vote. So that means a budget can pass 50, 51 votes. Haha, does it make sense now? The timeline just started today when you're watching this, yesterday, Thursday, April 10th. That's when the timeline started. And the rumor on the street is they want to get this done by the end of May, which means now we have to get as loud as we've ever been on defunding Planned Parenthood. All right. Next thing I want to talk about Planned Parenthood, the Medina case. So there was a big case in the Supreme Court, Medina versus Planned Parenthood, South Atlantic. Students for Life Action, of course, was there when the case was heard last week at the Supreme Court. This case boils down to Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood. South Carolina said, we aren't going to use our state Medicaid dollars, because remember, I've talked about this before. Medicaid is a block grant. So the federal government pays half, the states have to pay the other half. South Carolina said, listen, our half, we ain't paying Planned Parenthood because they kill babies. Planned Parenthood then found a woman to sue the state of South Carolina and basically say, I deserve free health care, and from South Carolina taxpayers, and I can use those healthcare dollars anywhere I want. Which literally doesn't make sense, because if your parents, if you have private health insurance, you know that's not the case. I have private health insurance. That doesn't mean I can go anywhere I want, because my health insurance negotiates with healthcare providers. So why do I have to drive my kids 45 minutes to orthodontist? Because the orthodontist 10 minutes down the street doesn't take my health insurance plan. And guess what? Braces just doubled in cost in the past 2 years because Joe Biden sucks and inflation sucks. That's the reality. And I have private health insurance. Same thing with public health insurance. When the government's paying for it, the government has the right to negotiate with healthcare providers to say, yep, we're going to give you money, and no, we're not going to cover you. It doesn't say, now you as a poor woman can't go to Planned Parenthood if you want to. And Planned Parenthood, out of the generosity of their own heart, could, I don't know, pay for your healthcare, or they can charge you at cost, or charge you and you can pay for it out of your own pocket. But to say that the state taxpayers have to give you money to go to a place that kills babies, nah. It's like, the case is literally crazy. And I encourage you to go back if you have time and listen to or read the transcripts of the oral arguments, because we need to be very clear. We need to tell Planned Parenthood to go fund themselves. There was a lot of things that came down on this case and what this case was really about. But it's essentially coming down to, is healthcare a right? Government-funded healthcare a right? And does a woman have the right to use her taxpayer-funded healthcare anywhere she wants? It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy that they're arguing that they have the right to get our taxpayer dollars. Planned Parenthood does so much that should disqualify them from getting any taxpayer funds, let alone Medicaid reimbursement, right? Like they traffic the body parts of babies they kill. They also kill babies. Even though killing the baby isn't technically against the law in most states, trafficking their body parts certainly is, and getting a profit for that or getting patents. They break federal law every time they sell body parts. They've also been accused in other states of Medicaid fraud. So they have a long history of this, of actually double billing states for services. There's the biggest cases out of Texas, where Texas said that they frauded the government $30 million and they only ever repaid $1.4 million back. So about 5% of what was allegedly stolen from the state. And they admitted in court, oopsie, we double billed and we got $30 extra million. That's like Planned Parenthood. Medicaid seems like a money playground for Planned Parenthood, and that's what they're doing. This is a corporation that literally kills babies for profit. So I don't think we should be surprised that they lack morals and, ethics and things like compliance and wouldn't fraud the government out of taxpayer dollars. I don't think you could have impeccable business ethics while also killing babies. I think the corruption seeps into your soul and is all encompassing throughout all of Planned Parenthood. And to be honest with you, the abuse isn't going to end until Planned Parenthood's taxpayer dollars are taken away. That's why we have to keep fully showing up, insisting that Planned Parenthood is defunded of our taxpayer dollars. And this is something that like pro-choice people, we find often pro-choice students on campuses will even agree with, right? Like, listen, Planned Parenthood's not needed. There are 19,000 service sites of federally qualified health centers across their country who already serve in low-income, rural, underserved healthcare neighborhoods, already get taxpayer dollars through HRSA, the Human Resources Services Administration under the Department of Health and Human Services. They're already getting our taxpayer dollars. They provide way more services than Planned Parenthood. They can't be making hundreds of millions of dollars in a profit that then they turn and use in politics, because these guys, these FQHCs, are not PACs. They're not 501c4 organizations like Planned Parenthood is. And their cost per patient served is like half of what Planned Parenthood's cost per patient served is. So there's like no reasonable argument to give Planned Parenthood money besides if you want more poor women to kill their babies through abortion. That's the only reason you can have. That's it. Speaking of Planned Parenthood, I've got more good news. After I recorded and filmed last week's episode, I found out that more Planned Parenthood clinics are closing. So it was, we had ones in California. There was one in Manhattan, the big one, the Margaret Sanger one, like their flagship, the San Diego in California, 4 in Illinois, Manhattan. Well, then we found out that there's 4 more closing in Michigan, Petoskey, Michigan, Jackson, Michigan, Marquette. And so that's 3 clinics are closing. Then they're consolidating 2 Ann Arbor, Michigan locations into 1, cutting 10% of their staff. Their leaders have cited financial challenges, including the Trump administration freezing their Title X funding. This is really interesting because something you have to note here, think about these states: California, Illinois, New York, and Michigan. All 4 of these states are blue Democratic states. The talking points we always hear is that these Republican states, they don't give Planned Parenthood money and they can't serve poor women. And it's all the Republican, mean, angry men at the state legislature who are Republican who are taking their money. This is in Democratic states, in states where they're already getting taxpayer funding, in states where their governors love Planned Parenthood and they can't make it work. Their business model kind of sucks. I would argue because chemical abortions have become so prevalent. And now, thanks to the Biden administration's reckless decision on chemical abortion pills in 2021, and women can order these chemical abortion pills from any place. They don't even have to prove that they're not having a life-threatening pregnancy, that they're not a victim of coercion, nothing. No one's going to Planned Parenthood to kill their babies. They're ordering these drugs online, these very dangerous drugs online. So Planned Parenthood just can't cut it. They don't have the chops. This is why their numbers their abortions are what funds them. And we've known this for years. And that's why we always see on their annual reports that like their good services continue to decline, while the only 2 services that go up every single time at Planned Parenthood are their abortions and now their wrong sex, gender confusing hormones. Yeah. All right. final segment today, I want to talk about the sad state of miscarriage. I just had this conversation with our team the other day about this story that I saw making the rounds on social media. A 24-year-old Georgia girl named Selena Scott suffered a miscarriage at 19 weeks at the end of March. News reports said that she was found unconscious outside, bleeding, and she was rushed to the hospital by first responders. Police officers then went back to the scene, found her deceased baby in a plastic bag in the dumpster. The next day, she was arrested. Let me read to you what the local news said. The local news said, Tifton police arrested and charged Scott with one count of concealing the death of another person and a second count of throwing away or abandoning a dead body prohibited. Now, let's back up. If you were on social media, the narrative was this woman was arrested for having a tragic miscarriage. Listen to what I just read to you from the local news report. What was she arrested on? Concealing a death and throwing away a dead body, dead human person. She wasn't arrested for having a miscarriage. She was arrested for not telling people her baby had died and throwing her baby away in the dumpster. Now, the coroner in the county determined that, yes, in fact, this baby had died a natural miscarriage death. The baby wasn't killed through RU46 or chemical abortion pills. So a few days later, the district attorney actually dropped all the charges against Selena, saying the system had gotten wrong. He said, after thorough examination of the facts and the law, my office has determined that continuing prosecution is not legally sustainable and not in the interest of justice. This case is heartbreaking and emotionally difficult for everyone involved, but a decision must be grounded in law, not emotion or speculation. Now, it's actually pretty interesting of a situation here because she did actually violate the law. I don't know if the first count of concealing would have stuck, but she definitely threw away a human being, a dead body. And we definitely have laws in our country that if your grandma dies at your house, you can't go out in your backyard and just bury her. One, that's bad for our water and all of us. But two, you got to call the authorities and say, hey, listen, my grandma died. And then they come, the coroner comes, does an investigation, then they release the body to the funeral home and she can be cremated or she can be buried. And then you can make your plan. And maybe you're allowed to bury her in your backyard, but you got to do it through the right channels. You can't just throw grandma out or bury her in her backyard. Like that is illegal. So this young woman was obviously shaken, didn't know what to do, and chucked her baby in a dumpster. I can't imagine the trauma of losing a baby halfway through pregnancy like this, a fully developed child enduring a painful labor by yourself and then being arrested because you didn't know how to dispose of your child. You didn't know what to do. But as a culture, we cannot truly say that she didn't, we can't really say that she should have known what to do because we haven't shown her what to do because we don't actually have hard conversations about miscarriage in our culture. We're a culture that throws away more than 2,000 babies every single day in abortion facilities and dispose of babies in our toilet bowls at home via chemical abortions. We culturally have told a whole generation of women that you just throw away a baby. We never have a hard conversation about what miscarriage is and what to do when you're having a miscarriage. I would wager if you asked 10 women what they should do after they passed a miscarried baby, you might get 10 different answers because there is no class. They don't take you aside in school and say, if you have a miscarriage, it's what you do. No one ever says that, right? Generally, most people would say, well, you have to go to the doctor, you have to call the doctor, but what is the doctor going to say? Our culture just doesn't talk about miscarriage. We just don't do it. Why don't we talk about miscarriage? Why don't we talk about this painful thing that a large majority of women have experienced and endured? Why? Because we can't. Because then it messes up the abortion narrative, friends. This is why we don't have an honest conversation about miscarriage. Because if we talk about women who are mourning the loss of their child, if we talk about honoring these human beings the way any human being's body should be honored and treated with value, if we have that discussion on the left hand, then on the right hand, what are we saying about abortion? Because abortion is intentionally killing those babies and chucking them in the dumpster, in the medical waste canister, or flushing them down the toilet. That is why abortion is the reason why we don't have an honest conversation about miscarriage in our country, and why women don't know what to do, why women suffer, why men suffer at home with the trauma and the pain of losing a child via miscarriage, because our culture doesn't even know how to talk about miscarriage. Because we can't, because if we talk about miscarriage, it might be mean to a woman who's had an abortion, or it might, by talking about miscarriage as a pro-choice person, it might undermine our whole view of why abortion should be legal. Instead of offering sympathy, instead of having real conversations, we do nothing. We say nothing. Since the stories broke, there's been a ton of stories of pro-life women who've shared their own experiences about being mistreated or not understanding what should happen after they've endured their own painful miscarriage. Some of the things women have shared. One said she was mocked, that she was talking about her miscarried babies just as much as she talked about her other children who survived to birth and beyond. Other women talked about how hospitals refuse to give mothers their child's body following a miscarriage, and women were forced to grieve the loss of their children without dignity and the closure of burying them. I actually have a very close personal friend who's very pro-life, worked in the pro-life movement. His wife had a miscarriage, and it was a fight to one, get the hospital to release the child, and then find a local funeral home who would take the remains of the child. Nobody would do it. Churches, even Catholic churches, which are pro-life, don't know what to say or how to help women who call asking for assistance. Many women said, I didn't know, and the church didn't know. There isn't a universal go-to ministry or assistance program to walk couples through a miscarriage process. And there's a couple that there's one I'll give you in a second, but it's not well known. The reality is there are specific resources out there that help women who go through this. And one of them is called Heaven's Gains, which offers compassionate, faith-based support for families experiencing miscarriage and stillbirth. They provide dignified burial products, grief support, guidance tailored to each family's very unique loss. It can walk parents through the sorrow, through the suffering, right? You can go to heavensgain.org for more information. But sadly, I had to Google this to find this out. I didn't even know. Miscarriage should be talked about. We should have a real conversation. But I think the majority of people know it's schizophrenic to mourn the loss of a child who's died in miscarriage and then celebrate the child, and celebrate when the child is killed in an abortion, call that reproductive rights and freedom. Because something cannot be and be at the same time. That's a philosophical fallacy. Either the child in the womb has value or it does not have value. Can't be up to the mother or the unique circumstance, which people try to argue with me all the time on campus. Either the child has value or it doesn't have child doesn't have value. You got to make up your mind. And sadly, our culture is closer to the child doesn't have value viewpoint. So that leaves women and families going through miscarriage to grieve alone and mourn completely in silence and not know what their rights are, how they can get the body of their child and properly bury their child. We in the pro-life movement understand better than anyone else why this has to change. So I invite you all to figure out a way and take up this cause. I would love in the comments, especially on the YouTube channel, to tell me, are there more resources? Are there better ideas? What can we do? How can we bring miscarriage ministries to churches or start one from scratch? Tag me on social media ideas. Like, let's actually have a real conversation, innovative conversation. Hey, Product Jen, this is your show host, Kristan Hawkins, and I have an incredible opportunity for you to make a real impact for life this summer. On Saturday, June 28th, we're gathering on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. for the National Celebrate Life Weekend Rally. And you do not want to miss this event. We are going to host the nation's largest diaper drive, sponsored by the nation's only pro-life diaper brand, Every Life. Here's the goal. We want to bring together 392,715 diapers and scatter them on the lawn of the U.S. Capitol. One diaper for every baby that's been lost to abortion at Planned Parenthood in the last year. It's going to be extremely powerful. But instead of letting those diapers, just go to waste or letting these precious lives be forgotten, we want to turn that number into hope for moms and families in need in the Washington, D.C. area. So we're going to be giving them away after the massive rally and display. We are in a critical moment right now in the pro-life movement. Defunding Planned Parenthood is finally possible with the new Trump administration. But we're going to have to push harder than ever before to show why Planned Parenthood doesn't deserve a dime of their taxpayer dollars. And I believe this massive display on Capitol Hill will send a clear message to Republican leadership on Capitol Hill that Planned Parenthood must finally go fund themselves. The National Celebrate Life Weekend Rally is a completely free event. All you have to do is go to celebratelifeweekend.org and sign up for the free rally. You can come, stand with us, bring some diapers, and be a part of a historic moment and provide real help to struggling families in need. And if you can't make it to Washington, D.C., you can still join us and make a difference because you can go to celebratelifeweekend.com and donate to our diaper fund. Every dollar you donate will go to purchase at-cost diapers from Every Life that we will use at this display to tell Planned Parenthood they never should deserve any of our taxpayer dollars. Then those diapers will be given away to families in need. It's going to be amazing. This is our chance to show the nation, to show all of America that the pro-life movement is about action. We're demanding action from our leaders on Capitol Hill to finally defund Planned Parenthood of our taxpayer dollars, and we're showing action that we love and care for her more than the greedy abortion industry. So sign up now at celebratelifeweekend.org. Thank you all for joining me today in this episode of Kristan Hawkins Show. I hope you will subscribe and follow me for more discussions like this. To hear from me daily, yes, daily on pro-life news you need to know about. It's a short text. You can join my personal text line by texting Kristan, my name, to 53445. Until next week, keep speaking up for the voiceless and stand for life.